Hey everyone, welcome to Pastor Play. So we have Riches Season 1, Episode 4, and we basically open up with Andre. He sets up a deal with the company Ultimate to cash invest £150 million, have equity stake in Flair and Glory, and basically they would have a seat on the board. And now Claudia, as Andre's doing that, Claudia is trying to get the shareholders on her side, which is mainly the siblings of Stephen, the aunts and uncles of Wanda, Gus, Alicia, Simon, Nina, and Nina. And so she's trying to get the shareholders on her side to vote in favor of the deal at the next shareholders meeting. And basically all of them have shares in the company. It's just that Nina and Simon have majority. And now again, Claudia's focus to me is to be able to have unlimited spending money. Yes, her children will technically be back in the role of CEO if she can get the shareholders to vote to have Ultimate basically come in and kind of basically, fill up that 20 million missing pounds hole. But at what cost? No company is going to invest that much money and let you do whatever you want. They're going to make changes and or give restraints on what Alicia and Gus can do as CEOs or co-CEOs, however they would work that out. And either way, we do end up finding out that the secret investor is the Asian Romeo guy that Nina has been sleeping with through the app from back in episode 2. And his real name is Rishi Mehta. His father was this big businessman who had multiple dealings and companies throughout like the UK. And basically he died and the controlling share interest went to Rishi. And of course, Nina right away thinks that Rishi and Claudia is somehow, colluding together, and that they're basically, trying to set this up so they could basically get control of the company. And she goes to Rishi, and she's like, no. Um, Rishi's like, no, I don't know Claudia. I didn't know that you were you. I tried to get to know you to take it more than just, basically booty calls and one night stands. I tried to get to know you more, Brooklyn, but you wouldn't let me. You didn't want to see even use our real names. And she's like, well, if that's true, then, basically side with me right now. And he's like, no, I will hear the ultimate deal. I will hear what you have to say as far as not going with this deal and make my decision then and there at the shareholders meeting. She's mad, but I mean he was fair. And I will say, from what we do see of Rishi, he does seem to be a decent guy. He really didn't know who Nina was. There was no like setup here from Claudia. Though if she had figured out how to do that through the apps, that would have been very interesting. But I guess she could find some hacker or whatever person to set something like that up. But that isn't what actually happened. They just really met by circumstance. I will say too that it is nice to see that the love interest for Nina was not some Caucasian person, because a lot of these streaming shows, any minority you have, usually automatically the love interest is usually Caucasian guy or girl. So it was nice to see that the love interest here was another minority. He's Irish Indian and he has a British accent. Okay, but either way, either way, that was really nice that I thought. And we also have this issue where the Flair and Glory's distribution, they can't keep up with the demand of the products. Thanks to that Face of Flair event, the products sales have kind of gone up through the roof. And basically the demand is higher than the supply can handle, and basically it's selling out of stores and online, but the distribution can't keep up with the sales and the orderings from the different stores and different things like that. So Alicia has the idea that they need to be direct to consumers, And, Gus is like, well, we can buy a black owned distributor company and have the manufacturing down in house instead of sourcing it out, where basically I think it was, where basically it was that some of the stuff was being done in the US and then it was like being sent to China, and then from China it was sent back to London or whatever. They will control all of that, own the factories that are making the products, and basically they're cutting off the middleman, and then they own their own distribution so they can control how much is being made and what is going out. That is their idea. Now, of course, when we end up having this shareholder meeting, um, Nina does talk to the other shareholders to try to get them to not vote in favor of the ultimate deal, but she doesn't seem to convince anyone to her side. Simon's already on her side. She doesn't even have to question that. She does try to get Alicia. I'm not Alicia. She does try to get Alicia and Gus, but they basically just kind of ignore her because they're kind of sticking with their mom. She does end up turning Wanda, to keep, because this is her father's company, and selling it to an outsider would ultimately kind of undo what he did and take it away from being a family company, which is true. And as as this is going on too, there's an article about Nina that comes out, and it also comes out about the money drain, the 20 million missing pounds, with potential buyers and Flair and Glory. That makes matters worse, as this comes out the day before the actual shareholders meeting. So now when we actually go to the shareholders meeting, Nina, again, she's trying everybody, all the shareholders are in the room, all the family members. Reese shows up, and Nina's trying to talk to some sense into the people, basically saying, if you do this company's not going to be the same. There's no way they're going to come in here and just let us do what we want. If once you sign that paper, once the ink dries, it's basically over. It's not going to be the same. And basically, everyone votes for the ultimate deal except Nina, Simon, and Wanda. The last vote ends up coming down to a cousin Dele who died, but his votes were passed to, shocker, Nina. I mean, not Nina, but Nina and Simon's mom, Oyen, who ends up voting for Ultimate and end up against her children. And that ends up turning out to be the deciding vote. So they end up, basically voting that they're going to take the Ultimate deal. Now, when they basically Nina's like, I'm not going to stay here and watch this company, fall and crumble, and watch basically, Flair and Glory go down with this ultimate deal. Simon ends up leaving upset at Nina because she's upset at what just happened. Um, and then Wanda finds out, I'm sorry, not Wanda, Nina ends up finding out that the missing money may have been transferred to Switzerland, and she ends up taking a flight to Zurich, Switzerland. And when she gets there to this hotel, they tell her that they were expecting her from her father either had left a note or left word that she may end up coming there. And then one of the last things we also found out in this episode too is that Wanda ends up seeing a text on Luke's phone from Gavin saying thank you for the quote. The article came out great, and that the money is in your bank account. So basically, Luke is the one that gave the article that came out before the shareholders meeting. He was the one who gave the quote about Flair and Glory being 20 million pounds, basically, yeah, 20 million pounds in debt because it's missing and they don't know where it is. And then also that they're also looking to be, they're looking to get an investment from another company or a different investor. So. And then, so now we have episode 5. So we see Nina, she gets to Switzerland and she goes to see the oncologist that her father saw. And basically, the doctor lets her know that the cancer was inoperable And he basically told Stephen that he needed to organize his affairs. And that Stephen had only seen the doctor that one time. And the doctor did let Nina know that because of the cancer, he was, twice more most likely to suffer a stroke or a heart attack, which he did end up. Um, And we also too find out that Stephen ended up having a secret private vault and he and only Nina has access to. She ends up finding all these documents and letterheads and different things, proof that Stephen had discovered the missing 20 million pounds, so that he was trying to figure out who it was and where was it at, but with no success. And that he had also he had been traveling to Zurich, out of the 6 or 7 times that he had gone. Well, I'm sorry. So he had only seen the oncologist one time, but he had traveled to Zurich about a total of maybe 5 or 6 times. So he was trying to basically figure out where was the money going, who was stealing the money, and he was basically doing it all off in another country. He wasn't even doing it out in London. He went to Switzerland to try to figure it out. And so once Nina gets all this proof, she calls and lets Gideon know that her father was basically trying to figure out who it was, but her father had no success, but that she's coming back to London. And can Gideon find a way to stop to stop Flair and Glory from getting taken over by Ultimate? Because at this point, the shareholders have agreed to the deal, but the paperwork hasn't actually been signed yet and things of that sort. So she still has a little bit of time to figure out maybe where the money is before, the ink can get signed on the deal with Ultimate and Flair and Glory. And through all this paperwork, we also find out that Nina discovers that Stephen had been sending their mom money for years, and their mom had been lying to them, Nina and Simon, saying that it was coming from a rich cousin. Now, at this point earlier, I told you about the idea that Gus and Alicia had about basically, you know, buying a black-owned company, using that factory to basically do its own distribution. At this point, they have the Ultimate team coming now to the offices of Flair and Glory. Andre is giving them a tour, and they basically, bring up the idea of doing that. Of being their own distribution. They also talk Gus and Alicia. They also come to them with the plan of starting a skincare line now too, not just hair. And Ultimate's like, you signed a non-compete clause. Starting a new skincare line, would affect Ultimate's other products. So basically, no. Um, you know, but of course, it's like you have control over your family business with Ultimate's, of approval, of course. So yeah, you're still in control as long as you get a yes or no from us. So basically, no, you're not in control. Now, we also see too that Nina ends up finding DNA test results for Wanda that shows that Steven is not Wanda's biological father. Now, she ends up taking this to Claudia, who says basically, if you don't tell Wanda about this, I will stop the sale of the Ultimate deal. And, Nina agrees not to tell Wanda. Claudia changes her vote, lets her family know that she votes against the Ultimate deal. Now Andre is upset, punching plaques on the walls, because now, because with the deal that he had set up between Flair and Glory and Ultimate, he was going to get himself a nice position at Ultimate, as well as, probably a big, salary, whatever. So now he loses out on all of that because now the deal is, dead on the floor. And in this episode too, we end up seeing that basically Nina lets Gideon know that Andre is the one stealing money from Flair and Glory. And she is having Andre's accounts referenced with the wire transfers from Flair and Glory to see kind of do they match up. And we also see in this episode too that Rishi comes back in the picture. He shows up at Nina's condo, But she's basically like, what are you doing here? We were over, when you decided to vote for Altame. And, basically she's not changing for anybody. He tells her that she's, kind of cold and distant, and that, that basically, that he tried to get to know her, but she wouldn't budge. And she's basically like, well, if I'm all these things, why are you trying to be with me? And she just like goes into her apartment or her condo. And I will say again, it does seem that Rishi might actually be a good guy. And I think he would understand her world as a CEO and businesswoman, because he's also a businessman. And, I think that they have a lot in common. But Nina is guarded, most likely, in case due to the fact, with her father and what happened between Stephen and her mother, and how her mom was treated, how, the dirt that Claudia did to get Stephen, and how, basically her mom and her and Simon were kind of screwed over. But also to the fact that her father allowed it to happen to begin with. You know, so it is what it is, and maybe, Rishi will return in the next episode or next season. But there's also this scene. There's also this scene of this episode with Wanda in the club, and basically the two girls, or a girl who likes Luke, is like, he's only with Wanda because she's paying for everything. That's the only reason he's with her, and he feels like he owes her, or that he's trapped. And Wanda pretends like she's gonna beat up the girls, and then they kind of run. These two little Caucasian girls, and then they're like, some black girls are pretty, but she's not. Wanda is not ugly, but they just being ignorant, rude, and they didn't even know Wanda was there in the bathroom, but she heard everything. And so then we end up going home, and Wanda ends up going home, and she ends up pretending that Alicia was the one who talked to the journalist that trashed Fair and Glory, to Luke in this article. Luke acts surprised. And this is also happening when she was recording him trying to submit a video or a tape to send to a director for this film. And in the video, he ends up trashing the director and saying that the film script is bad. And Wanda ends up putting this online. She ends up calling security and has him escorted from her house. And, and then Luke is like, Wanda, where will I go? And she ends up throwing some money at him on the floor. He doesn't take the money, but he does end up leaving. So I thought that was great. Too late, but, the actor Ho, it's funny how he had no value for her family, but used their money and their connections to try to basically propel and advance his career. And I think it's great because when Wanda found out, she was like, "Oh no, you're not screwing over my family." So I'm just glad that I'm just glad at the outcome of this with Wanda, because even from the first episode, Leak just kind of seemed like womp womp. So I'm glad that this relationship went nowhere. And then now with with Nina knowing about Wanda, Claudia ends up leaving town, and Wanda tells Alicia and Gus about their dad's secret safe, and that she's found someone to open it. And then the next morning, we see that Nina has Andre arrested in fraud and theft of Fair and Glory, assets, and they end up taking him to jail. But then later that night, Andre ends up getting released, and Nina has a car outside waiting for him. She takes him back to her flat. She tells him it's time to catch a thief, and the episode ends. So then the question is really like, now, as we get to this last episode, episode 6, the question is, well, who's the thief? If it's not Andre, because that's who we thought it was, Andre, well, then is it Gideon? Is it Maureen? Is it Claudia? Is it one of the kids? Is it somebody we don't know about? Gideon was the previous CFO before Andre. So who is it? What's going on? Was Steven's death an accident, or was it something normal? Yeah, we found out that the oncologist said that because of him having cancer, those things are most likely, but was there foul play? And so